Okay, folks, welcome to the Georgia Hour with BKP. You're watching the Georgia Hour on Voice of RuralAmerica.com. Thank you very much. Now, this is every day. We take 1 hour at 10 a.m. dedicated to Georgia. So you're welcome to help us out any way you can with information. In fact, Diane, I find it difficult to get the time to read all the information, but please keep sending it as much as you can. I want to say this, but I don't want to discourage someone. You understand? I never want you to say, well, I think I'll send this to BKP, but I bet he already has it, so I won't. So my next comment is not to discourage you in any way of sending me everything you can when you can. Give me number 72. I'm going to just say, including Diane, I'm going to say I received this letter probably 8 times yesterday. And even this morning receiving it. So please immediately get it to me. Don't think, well, maybe I already have it, because sometimes that's not the case. Now, we have done extensive work here on HB581. Extensive work. And all I wanted to do on HB581, it was proposal number 1 on the November ballot, a constitutional amendment. We answered so many questions, but it was, and I don't have those numbers, but it was voted in statewide about 66%, somewhere around there. Statewide, it was voted 66%. Then county by county basis, for the most part, overwhelming. All right. Floyd County, close to 70%. And I spoke to Senator Huffstedler. I think it's his name over there. Huffstedler, Senator. Floyd County, almost 70%. And the 53rd district, where State Senator Colton Moore is, several of the counties in that area are from 68 to 73% voted yes. The county I live in, was it 71 or 69? Like Gilmer was like 73. I mean, I'm just putting these out here. We can check them for you. But they were in the 68 to like 75% range voted yes. Now, that is just a fact. You can go look it up. But in HB 581, the liberal House, Georgia State House of Representatives. Now, the closest thing we have in Georgia to being conservative, the closest thing, I'm not going to call them conservatives, but the closest thing we have is the Georgia State Senate. We do have a handful of conservatives in there that are trying to do the right thing. Over at the House, no. John Burns is about as liberal, to me, in my opinion. The corruption in this state is so enormous on that side of the aisle. That's my opinion, okay? But so when the Senate passed this, and I'm going to move this along, I don't want to get stuck on this because people are tired of hearing about it, but this letter added some different life to it yesterday. Light, because this is from State Senator Colton Moore. And so when the Senate passed HB 581, if you're new to this, just a little history, they passed it overwhelming with no opt-out. They sent it to the House. Senate passed it. Now, this HB581 has to do with capping our appraisals on our property in Georgia. They're going through the roof. Now, the other thing at local municipalities, counties, Board of Education, they don't like to hear is they've used in several areas of the state, they've used the increase in appraisals to increase the revenue they bring in. Revenue through increased appraisals under the guise of we're keeping your millage rate the same. Yes. And realistically, it's a tax. And the taxes keep going up for generally everyone. And all this says, when I say all this really says is, look, if you want to maintain the revenue you're bringing in your county, Board of Education, your cities, whatever it may be, you have to do one or two things. You have to be satisfied with the cap on the appraisals. And I mean, appraisals could go up as high as 10% a year or in that area. Don't want to get quoted on numbers. And if you can't be happy with the appraisals going up, at a fixed rate, not to exceed inflation and the revenue it brings in, then turn around and tell your citizens you're going to raise their taxes. You can't continue to raise revenue based on appraisals over and above the rate of inflation. That's as simple as it is. If inflation is 3%, you can't raise revenue off an appraisal that is up 19%. It's not right. Under the guise of I'm keeping your millage rate. So if it goes up, appraisals go up 6-7%, that's the revenue you're going to have to live off of, or look at your citizens and tell them that their property tax is going to go up. So I'm going to get into that in just a minute. So the Senate sent HB 581 over to the House, and the liberal House of Representatives in Georgia would not accept it as is, because you have the agencies, you have the ACCG, the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. You have the State School Board Association. You have the municipality, Georgia Municipality Association for cities. They all went into the House and lobbied and said, you got to give us an opt-out. You got to give us an opt-out of this. Now, I've said this is why the House sent it back to the Senate and said, okay, we'll go with this. If you let the counties, the Board of Education, and the cities not care, my words, but the impression, not care what the will of the people at the voting booth say. So no matter what they say at the voting booth, you have to allow our county, our Board of Education, our city to say, don't care you voted 70%. Well, we didn't understand it. So that's somewhat of where we're at. So I've done 2 segments. You can find those on Rumble with State Senator Steve Gooch. I've done 2 entire segments on this. We put them up there. I asked every question. Diane sent me questions. There's 3 or 4 other ladies that sent me questions. There's guys sent me questions. I went to a 2-hour town hall, and I listened to a Board of Education superintendent. I listened to commissioners. I listened to municipality chair of city council members. I listened to people in the audience. I went to a 2-hour meeting. So I went to a 2-hour meeting. I had 2 interviews. They're on Rumble, Voice of Rural America, with State Senator Steve Gooch. I asked all the questions. Diane will tell you I asked every question she sent, the other sent, in a roundabout way to get the conversation so you can find out, get all the information. But yet, the counties and the cities, they're opting out. And Board of Education, not everyone, but a lot of them are opting out. So yesterday, this letter come out, January 27th, from State Senator Colton Moore. All right. Dear citizens, school board members, tax authorities of Northwest Georgia. He's in the 53rd district up there in Northwest Georgia. Wonder if this sounds like anything we've been talking about and the things we've covered. To prevent any unjust property tax increases onto the citizens of Northwest Georgia, I respectfully request that tax authorities do not opt out of the legislation HB581. Citizens of Northwest Georgia voted in great numbers to have their homestead appraised tax values not to increase more than the rate of inflation. Now, we got questions on the homestead, home rule, and losing your exemptions. And State Senator Steve Gooch said that the lowest exemption of that year when your property is appraised is what would go into effect. And you do not lose local control, no matter who keeps telling you this. I'm telling you right here, at the rate of inflation. Tax boards such as county commissions and school boards commonly use this tactic to raise revenues without raising the millage rate. It's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I've said in how many segments. Diane knows. It's using assessments to raise revenue, and it's a tactic without increasing the millage rate. See, what they know is if they increase the millage rate, that they can't just look at you and say, I didn't raise your taxes. Right now, they say, I didn't raise your millage rate. I can't help the values are going through the roof. Let's see. Otherwise known as a linear tax increase. I am strongly opposed to all tax increases, including a linear tax increase. A tax increase masked as increased appraisal, but not increased millage rate. But this takes the mask off of that increase, and that's where the opt-out is. By opting out, you are directly undermining in all capital letters the will of the people. And I've told you this over and over. This letter touches every part that I've told you about. By opting out, right, the will of the people. Why do you think, and I've said this, I'm being very redundant, why do you think that the ACCG for commissioners, the State Board of Education Association that they're a member of, the Georgia Municipal Association, why do you think all of those agencies did not come out in front of the vote and fight to stop it and defeat it? Why didn't they come out and tell the people, you don't want this? And it get voted down. Right? Why not? But it got voted in by 70%. I'll tell you exactly why they didn't come out in front of it and say, don't vote for it. Because they never had to worry about who voted for it, and how big of a margin. They never had to concern themselves if it was 52%, 58%, 65, or 73. They could say, I'm out of here. And here's what gets me, and I've heard this over and over. Well, people voted yes on this, not understanding it. That's what I've heard over and over. They didn't understand when they voted on it. Okay, so the margin passes it passes by a margin of 52-48. Now you start telling me people didn't understand it. I start saying, okay, that's possible. The people that didn't understand it could have altered the results. But we're talking 70%. Now, we are open, okay? We are open to appropriate discourse, but I will not entertain any unjust local tax increases or false rhetoric that opting out gives counties more local control. The rest of HB581 legislation stands regardless of whether a homestead exemption opt-out exists. Any opting out or other unreasonable local taxes will leave me with no option but to bring forward local legislation for a total assessment freeze of funding, along with any other administrative means to prevent unjust tax increases onto our citizens. He will take a piece of local legislation down to the floor and get it passed and freeze it. He says, hey, if you're going to take our district and you're going to raise taxes, if you're going to opt out and do this, you're forcing my hand. That's going to happen across the state. You're forcing my hand. This allows citizens once again to showcase their will of limited taxes in Northwest Georgia. Sincerely, Colton Moore, District 53. Folks, I personally, as a taxpayer in the state of Georgia, I don't care to share with you. I voted yes. I don't care to share that with you. I voted yes on this. Okay? I don't care to share with you. I support this, and I do not support my county, my Board of Education, or any cities, which I don't have any bearing on the cities. But if you're in the city opting out, I don't agree with it. But I do know this. I will say, I'm not going to name the county, but the level of arrogance of a county that I'm aware of against their people in a really I don't care manner, that's getting pretty old to all of the property taxpayers in the state of Georgia. It is getting old. Anyhow, all right, so we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll get into another issue. You can put that out. Somebody asked me to comment on it this morning. I had several people ask me to comment on it. I have once again. Thank you for tuning in to the Georgia Hour. We're going to take a brief break, and we will be right back to wrap up our Tuesday show. Oh, I like that. Thanks, Diane. I didn't see that. The circle of I call it the circle of not my fault. Take a break, Diane. We'll be right back.